Bill from New Zealand. I believe it's quite hot over there. It's only 26 degrees here in Melbourne, and you're in New Zealand, and it's 30 degrees. Is that a true story?
The hottest was last Friday was 36. It's been low 30s for the last week, and I'm melting, Barry.
Oh,
but nice to see you again, young fella.
Oh, well, young fella, I'm only 74, Bill, and you're catching up, I think, or around the same. But there's been, since you've done this tour over here in Australia, there's been a lot of inquiries from the UK, a lot of people, and Western Australia, to the people up in Western Australia who I told this was going to happen. And neither of us have died in the meantime, so it looks like it may happen. Bill, can you tell us a bit about this fiction system that we rely on?
Well, it's not actually a fiction system, Barry. It's a very well organized system, but they've led us into believe that it's real when, in fact, as you say, at a stretch, it is a fictitious system, okay? But the one thing that they can be relied upon, the people who run that system, is that they keep very, very good records. And this is where we fall down. Okay, so we have relied on their system to identify us instead of putting your beautiful face forward and saying, this is me, not that piece of paper. Okay, so, the first sort of step towards doing that is you've got to start establishing your own database and your own record keeping system, and which is, first of all, a means of identification, because if you go into a bank or anywhere, cop pulls you up and you rely on their system, then they say, well, yes, we are acting for the surname in this, and you're using that surname. So if you use that surname, and it tells you in the good book, thou shalt not take thy father's name in vain. So if you use that surname, you're going to be bound to it. You're going to be the trustee, and they're going to go and pillage that account. So once we set up our own credentials with an ID, and it works. I use it all the time, but I only use William Henry because that's all my parents gave me, was William Henry. The system gave me the surname or the surety name, which was Turner. So the moment that you start identifying yourself, then their system falls over, because they must have two things. They must have a name and address. Right. Okay, and so if they want an address, I'll say, well, you can address me as Sir.
I love that. Well, we got a good bit of good news from somebody this morning. I won't say where they are in Australia, but who used their own identity. The one I did it for them, and they produced it at the court only in relation to a parking ticket, and it changed everything in the court. The clerk of the court said, well, this changes everything. You may not have a case to answer because you're now established your own identity, which is outside the system in which I call it the fiction, the ship and dry dock normally uses. So you're now actually, you're basically creating a common law court, whether they like it or not. You're dragging them off that ship, and perhaps the anchor has just been pulled up, and that's when you identify yourself as something other than that surname. So, Bill, that's the creating your own identity, which we got from you. Now, of course, you is a pronoun, and it could be John Yong Yu in China. So let's try and leave the you out, but for the paperwork involved. So the ID, your own personal ID, where it puts the surname as the sending state, etc., is a very important step in your recovery from fiction.
Indeed, it is, Barry. You see, we've relied on it for everything. Now, the good part of what's happening now is that we're part of the Great Awakening, and that Great Awakening is waking people up to what has been going. We've been living in a dream state, and now, through the likes of me and others that have done this for 20 odd years now, we've woken up, and certainly after coming over to Australia there, and I feel there's a hell of an awakening happened in that short time. And the people are actually working together. And this is what the whole thing is about, is working together, working as a group. And, you know, when you work together as a group, you bring in that extra factor. And so once the people start, and like you said, you did the ID up for that guy. I've since found a guy over here who has bought a $20,000 machine, and now he's doing identity cards, but he's gone one better. He's now printing registration plates for your cars and things.
Oh my God, that's
okay. So
that one.
Okay, so more and more, and this gentleman, a very very wealthy gentleman, much as what I was when I was when I was in the business world, suddenly woke up and he got in touch with me, and now they are really pushing it. He's got a group of followers, and the same sort of thing. They're setting up their own records, their own registration for their vehicles, the whole thing. Now, the most important thing is that, well, I'll give you an example, Barry. Over here we have a what they call Maori land claims. Okay, now the Maoris who had land confiscated from them, it happened all over the world. It happened in Canada, America, Australia. You know, the British came out and they helped themselves to the land. Okay, so over here we have a settlement program for them called Maori land claims. Now, there was a tribe down the east coast of New Zealand that went up to the Maori land court, but they had a book of records. They had all their records intact. One of the very early ones married an English gentleman who knew the system, and he set up a record book. So every birth, death, and marriage has been entered into that record book. Now, what happened when they met with the Waitangi Tribunal? They said, let's compare records. They put their book on the table, and 5 minutes later they had their check.
Wow, that was pretty fast. It just shows the importance of keeping your own records.
Indeed, and establishing those records. So you must notify them. You know, don't just print an ID card and say, "Hey, this is me." You must identify yourself to the land transport, to the courts and everything, and say, "Do you have jurisdiction over this sovereign entity?" Which they know they don't.
No, of course they don't. Yeah, of course.
So once you start establishing that basis, then the whole thing changes. And as you say,
I was talking to Kevin Arnott, which was a minister, or I think even a bishop. I'm not too sure of his rank in the Anglican Church in Canada. And we were talking about, he's gone to the next stage. He's in doing prosecutions. You may be aware of the guy. He's the one who charged the Pope, the one that stood down. Ratzinger was his name, or he was the Pope's known as Benedict. He used the international court, and we talked about the flag yesterday. So getting the flag into the court would be very hard, but there's 5 levels, so we need 5 flags, as you're well aware of. But that's what he said, we can set up an international court, and the bar being fence, well, at the fence we plant the international flag or the Australian flag. It becomes our flag in our court, and apparently we don't need a magistrate or a judge. We appoint somebody like yourself who has knowledge of the law, and they become the magistrate in charge or in supervision of the grand jury. And that
well, there's a couple of things. Look, they've got a very, very good system, Barry, and unless we've got something that can replicate that, we have to come. It says in the good book that you come out in 1s and 2s. Okay, so. But part of that great awakening process, I believe that there is another system all ready to go, but it's just going to take the great awakening when enough people wake up, and I believe it's around 2% of the population wake up. then the new system will kick in. Now, I mean, New Zealand's got a huge part to play in this, and people don't realise that New Zealand is one of the top half of New Zealand is one of the few sovereign nations in the world.
Oh, I didn't
in
know
that
that.
the Queen still protects the top half of New Zealand. And like tomorrow here in New Zealand is the Waitangi Day, and that is where the government goes to get the final approval to open their private company for another year. They can't open Parliament until they get the approval from the Maori Council, which is up at Waitangi.
Interesting.
Okay, but,
Very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, and the Navy still protects those sovereigns, although there has been a bit of interference happened, but to all intents and purposes, there's two things happen. First of all, they get the church, which is the Ratana Church. That happens on the 25th of January. They get their tick, then the Ratana Church gets their check. Then they go up to Waitangi. They get the approval from the Maori Council. Maori Council gets their check, and the company gets to run the country for another year. Okay, now, just stepping back a little bit there, you were talking about the Pope, Ratzinger. Now, in 2013, he got thrown out about 2011 or something like that. He got thrown out. 2013, the new Pope said, we are no longer in control. In other words, their 2,000 years was up. And what he said to the people who are controlling the world, he said, your time's up. He said, you no longer have sovereign immunity. What you do now is on your own bat. We will no longer be protecting you. And this is what Trump and what's happened in England with Brexit, what's happening in France, Hong Kong, all around the world, happening big time now in Australia and New Zealand here. Everyone's starting to wake up to the fact that we have been slaves.
Exactly. And it's as I said, we were in a coma when we allowed a lot of things to happen here. And I understand what it's like. If you try to tell me 20 years ago about some of the things that happened, I would have been very upset. But now I'm in the awakening stage of says, oh my God, we've been hoodwinked for so long. We got to fight back. So we've got to stick to the program and get the people set up their own identifications, get rid of that surname. They can put it into the box and say, look, that's my family name. It's pretty important to most people. But as far when it comes into the courts and fictional courts and the land of sleeping vessels, it's got to be taken out of their system, and we've got to go back to common law, which is our law. And I'm sick of hearing people say, "Oh, that's not legal." We've got to stop using this word legal, and we've got to stick to lawful or not lawful. I mean, unlawful itself starts with a vowel, so that's rubbish as well. So we've got to stick lawful or not lawful. Bill, what do you reckon?
Well, I'll make it even simpler. Look, unlawful is against the law, and illegal is a sick bird.
I like that. The Roman bird.
What I can tell you is everything is about contract. Okay, now every situation that you come to, a contract is formed. Okay, and this is how they operate their system, is that they must get an adhesion contract. Okay, and remember that word, adhesion contract. So once they have an adhesion contract, and that's normally just responding to them. Okay, you believe I am superior to you, so now we have an adhesion contract. Once a contract is formed, once a contract is agreed to, then a trust is formed. Now, the rules with a trust are that you must not disclose anything about that trust. So anything you ask them after that, they can't tell you, because that would be a breach of trust. Okay,
right.
So okay, so the most important part is to stay out of contract. And you know, like, I mean, I've said to judges over the years, If I answer that, would that be a contract, Your Honour?
I love that. That's good. Oh, well, this, actually, we've all engaged it with the driving license aspect, and that comes up. We have the case of the unilateral mistake, which can get us out of that contract. Is that true?
Absolutely, Barry. They can never ever give full disclosure. If they gave full disclosure, it would give the game away, because they would have to say, look, the license applies only to a fiction, which is the surname. Okay, so they can never give full disclosure. But you would also want to go on to DuckDuckGo and have a look at mutuality of contract, and anything, any court decision or any other thing like that that you want to tip over, apart from using those two, there's another one called ex debito justitiae. Okay, so ex debito justitiae means that if there is a fiction involved in the court case, it has to be a void court case. It's void ab initio, void as of right. So ex debito justitiae will wipe out any court case, because first of all, the plaintiff is a fiction, the defendant is a fiction. Okay, so you can't be tied to a fiction. But
I think I should have Harry Potter's background here with the birds flying around and the fairies and stuff. I think I picked the wrong background.
I like your background. I hope you like my crown behind me.
I like the crown, Bill. It's very, very good. Up close and personal, that crown.
Barry, I've got to say, what you're doing is really great, and I think your channel's going to grow quite significantly, because of the ongoing effort you're putting in, and trying to awaken people. And the more the people learn about this thing, and as you said, if I'd told you this a few years ago, you would have thought I was a conspiracy tinfoil hat. But I was the same, Barry, and I had to get broken down very gradually, because I was so indoctrinated. When you're worth a few million, I owned 7 homes. I owned 7 houses. I had an apartment in Brisbane. I was worth a few dollars.
It's funny. You can
me down.
It's they always go after anybody who becomes a tall poppy. There's quite a lot of people who, if you make it, you're up there. They want to bring you down. But you have to go back to Santa Claus. See, we all believed in Santa Claus, and how disappointed we were when we were told that Santa Claus didn't exist, and then you were told not to tell your sister. I had a sister, and that was a hard part. But when you tell people that there is no government, it's a corporation, and the poor old police force, which are, God knows, it's an incredible hard job to do today. They're living in a land of fiction, and they have to feed their families, and they're up against. I mean, respect is totally gone. The police force is diminished. So Santa Claus, in some cases, still exists for a lot of people, and we have to tell them Santa Claus does not exist. How do we? That's the hardest part of getting the message out, because you're up against a lot of resistance, and it's all for their own good, and they will fight every tooth and nail just to say, I don't want to know.
Barry, that's part of the system. Part of their system is to say it's okay to tell lies. Okay. So first of all, you teach them to believe in the fictitious man, which is Santa Claus. Then you believe in another fictitious man, and then and then there is another fictitious man behind all of that, and that's one who keeps getting charged and getting into trouble. So everything's a fiction, but it's okay to lie. It's okay to tell lies.
Well, I did a thing on lawyers not telling. They don't tell lies. They just bend the truth like that. He goes up the graveyard with 10 of his kids. I don't know whether you told me that, and someone told me. And he went to the estate agent and says, "I've 11 kids," and he took one with him. And he says, the poor estate agent says, "Where's the rest of your kids?" And he said, "Oh, well, they're up in the grave with their mother," and they were up there visiting. So he wasn't lying. So basically, that's how the fiction works. So there's no more Santa Claus once you pass the use of reason. We'll give them 7. How about that, Bill?
Exactly. So the most important thing for anyone that's new in this game, or anyone that's facing any sort of troubles, is everything is a contract. They're trying to get you into a contractual relationship. So question them. So if I answer that question, am I giving away my rights and getting into a contractual relationship with you? Because the moment you answer, you are giving up your rights. Okay, now, people say, look, the cop won't give me his name. Do you know the reason why he won't give you his name? Because he knows his rights. He knows he does not have to give you his name.
He does in Victoria. He has to do it, and he has to give it to you in writing. Failure to do it, I think it's 5 or 6 penalty points in the Crimes Act. So in Victoria, that law is pretty strong, and you'll find most of the police will identify themselves and where they're from, which is fair enough.
Okay, bit different over here.
Yeah, has to do business on the ship. What action should they take when they get a letter to it? They got to attend court. They're summons to court on next month and a certain date. When they get this letter, where do they shove it, Bill?
Okay, it's only an assumption or a presumption, Barry, and so you must rebut every presumption. Otherwise, it stands as the truth. Okay, so the moment you get it now, when you get into the civil matters, they send a process server around, and that's where you rebut the presumptions. They say, are you so-and-so? And you say, you know I'm not. You know that that's a piece of paper, and I will not take service. Now, someone in America just did that, refused service. Hillary Clinton refused service, okay? And you can refuse service if you know your rights. Okay, now if it's an invitation on paper, it's not to a birthday party, so you're going to have to rebut all those presumptions and say, look, and if like everyone has done, like I've told you, that you have not only your birth certificate but you have your live birth record,
or your proper ID.
Yep, or proper ID, you identify yourself and say, look, thank you for your invitation, but you're inviting me to come along as a trustee for that corporation, and which I will not do, and I will expose it in your court. So please put it where the sun don't shine. Look, Barry, the most important thing is that people work together and share with each other what they're doing, okay? Now, if anyone's charging for this, you'll notice that on my channel, it's not, I do not have advertising on my channel, okay? I do not want to be paid for this. And, I mean, if I'm over here, Barry, the younger ones are coming through, and they're coming on so quick. Like I told you about the guy here doing the number plates and that, he's only in his 30s, and man, these guys are so onto it. And I mean, they leave us old buggers for dead.
Yeah, we need to advertise and get some young people in to learn common law and to learn how to.
Honestly, the internet is doing it all for us, Barry. We've just got to keep doing what we're doing. It's going to happen this year. This is when it happens. Okay, and Trump will be re-elected, and yep, he's the catalyst. Everyone is starting to grow arms and legs now, thanks to that man. I mean, I was a little bit earlier, but
No, I've always been behind him. It's amazing. The Democrats remind me very much of the Labour Party, and the Labour Party here destroyed this country. The Democrats are doing their best to destroy America, and they couldn't even organize a small voting session in America. So the Democrats and Labour are the rats, and the Greens are the rats of the world.
Indeed.
Donald Trump is doing a great job, and he'll help us out as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bill, from Barry here in Melbourne, thanks very much for your fantastic information, and I hope this reaches a lot of people, especially in the UK, which you had a great following, and they'll be back on answering questions. I'll put an email up for me. If there's anything of great importance, I'll send it on to you, and you can edit it. Well, thanks for appearing on this wonderful channel and the lovely backgrounds and stuff. So it's been a great afternoon. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Barry. And anytime, just give me a call.
I will do that.
Thanks.
Just hang on. Fantastic talking to you, Bill. That was great to see you back online and seeing you again. I did put a little notice to say there would be information at the end, and there will be a little bit of information at the end of this. Bill's YouTube address, London's address, so if you've got something that's important, you can send me an email, and if I can help, I can, and if not, I'll pass it on to Bill if it's very important. But anyway, you looked at this video, share it as much as you can, try and convert a few young people would be fantastic, because they're the people that are going to be running our country in the moment. As you can see in America, like the Democrats and of course the Labour Party, they thrive on misery, and the more miserable you can present yourself, the more you will get listened to. So we're not victims. Look, happiness exists, and we've got to chase it, chase happiness. Now, as far as, again, looking at the video and doing nothing about it, I've got a few friends which are probably watching this now who, hell is full of good intentions, lads. You said you're going to set up your own identification, but you still haven't done it. Those who have done it have benefited. So if you're interested, send me an email that you wanted. I will send you the necessary, like a photograph and a copy of your signature and information such as that. It will be kept confidential, of course. And I will, to become a CPO, and you already have taken an oath to Queen Elizabeth and her successors in the army or in the police, as a policeman or a policewoman, and as a soldier, you already have served your country, so you do not need to take that oath again. Anyway, it's Spy from Fiction Land, so keep on tuned and remove the fiction from your life. Dr. Barry, sign off.